Hello, wonderful. It is Sarah, and I'm here with Vicki Haddock, and she is a transformational coach for women. Hey, Vicki, how are you?
Hi, Sarah. I am doing great today, and I'm really excited to be here with you and getting the chance to talk about our favorite topics.
Which is funny because we're talking trauma today, and
Right.
that's like such coach language, right? Because when it's like, oh yeah, let's talk trauma. I was actually in the Mrs. Tennessee for America pageant, kind of a I've never done a beauty pageant before, but I did it as an adult to like push past fear and all that kind of stuff. And they were talking about makeup and eyelashes and all this stuff. And I was like, man, I'm used to talking about really traumatic subjects.
Right?
I almost didn't know how to small talk anymore.
The fluff stuff. Sometimes it's nice to talk fluff too.
It is nice, though I don't usually. It was a good practice. I was like, makeup.
How fun for you to be in that pageant.
Shocking.
I'm excited.
Yeah, well, I was already in it. And it was really, people are like, oh, that's so great. And I was like, but really it was scary, right? To do your first beauty pageant after two 9-pound babies, like in a swimsuit competition in the middle of COVID, like it was out of my comfort zone for sure. But I was I'm always pushing women out of their comfort zones. And so it was a transformational thing for me too, to lead by example.
So what was the fear in there underneath it? Like if you could say like what was it? Was it the fear of being seen or heard or
Um, the fear of the shoes,
oh
like really, and the heels were so tall, and I thought I wasn't nervous about the interview. I wasn't nervous. Like I just don't like other people have had practice walking or had practice more with their posture. I had practice in these things that it it things were not habits for me that were habits for other people. So I was having to think them out in a way that was different than my
yeah.
normal life, which I get to do the things I'm good at all the time versus things I'm not good at. So it's a good practice for me. It was good. Yeah.
Well, and stretching you out of your comfort zone, what did you take away from that?
Uh, it reminded me of what I do when my back's against the wall,
Yeah.
right? And when I feel uncomfortable. And I asked for help. I was aware of what happened, right? It's like those shoes are dang big. Like they're like maybe like 6 or 7 inch heels. Like they're really scary, little tiny. And it was like, okay, I have to walk slowly. What if I fall? And it's like, I recognize there's a problem. I went and turned the problem into problem solving mode rather than turning it against me. You're so
You
stupid.
used all your coach
I
skills
used all
to
my
solve
coach
the
skills.
problem.
And it was
Practical in
great.
every aspect.
It is. And it was great reminder. No, this is really what you do. Right.
Yeah.
So I had to start problem solving and get help, not turn it against myself, you know? But
Sounds like a win.
I didn't win, but I made finalist. So, I mean, it was good. Yeah, it was great.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. So as we talk about trauma, right, and the self-talk and learning, and you already used one of the F words, right? Fear. When you
Yes.
asked me that question, which is very much on purpose. So tell us a little bit about what you do, who you are, and the 5 Fs.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a transformational women's coach, and I specialize in helping women become unsilenced and awaken to the greatest potential that they already have inside of them. They just haven't been connected to it. And there's so many ways that we've been silenced and conditioned in our lives as women that and that is the emotional trauma is
Yeah.
much of that, not to mention the old archaic things our society conditions us to do and be as women. But specifically, I think today we're talking about emotional trauma. And I define emotional trauma as anything from your mom forgetting to pick you up at a school event and you're standing there on the sidewalk wondering like, oh, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
To, those more intense experiences that we have with emotional trauma that leave really lasting impacts on our life.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that women at all levels, they're working to either get out of a toxic relationship or they've been out of one and they are working to bring some dream into their life, but they keep snapping back to this baseline of unhealthy something. And that's where, our emotional traumas will keep us snapping back to that baseline until we heal and resolve them. And so I call them the 5 F's, the freeze, fight, flight, faint, or fawn syndromes. So.
And I really want to point out the word baseline there, right? And it's like when even there's a baseline for happiness. I'm sure you've seen that research, right? And so even if if they're miserable when they win the lottery, they go back to being miserable. Or if they're really happy and they end up in a wheelchair or something, they go back to their baseline of happiness. And after a toxic relationship, we have to reset our baseline.
Yes, we do. And usually as adults, toxic relationships happen because there's something we haven't dealt with from childhood that kind of sets us up to that. And that was kind of my story. So I grew up in an extremely conservative religious group that controlled every aspect of life. It was, owning who you were, your voice or speaking was just not safe, if it was anything other than what was acceptable. And so I was taught to be controlled. And then at 15, my family left that group and I met a young man and, was taught this whole thing of good girls grow up and get married and have babies. And so at age 19, I got married. Well, my partner came from 3 generations of alcoholism. And although he was not drinking at that time and swore he wasn't going to because of the impact he saw on it, what I realized later is he was taught to be the controller. That's all he saw in his life. So we had this perfect storm of controlled and controller, and, was no more his fault than my fault or anybody's fault. It's just was the way it was. But as an adult, recognizing, I had no idea what freeze, fight, flight, faint
Yeah.
was.
You didn't learn that, and you were learning Shakespeare. And
Right.
What? Yeah.
All these practical things we should be taught in school.
So what's interesting is I ran a mental health campaign for teens, and one of the conversations I think we need to have with teens and young women in this situation, just like yours, is we get used to taking orders from parents. So you're a teen girl, everyone is nearly more powerful than you. Like your parents are more powerful than you, teachers are more powerful than you, coaches are more powerful for you. So it feels normal to have someone tell you what to do. Insert boyfriend. And it's like, whoa, your boyfriend shouldn't act like your parent. But at 16, how are you supposed to have the life experience to know, oh, this should feel completely different than a father, an angry father,
And that's where, we would hope that healthy relationships among parents would role model that to kids in an ideal world. But, and it's what has been my mission. I've been divorced for 10 years and I made it my mission to role model to my kids different ways of doing things. They were 7, 11, and 14 when I went through that. But now today, teaching women how to spot those syndromes, it is so key to me. And can I share a couple examples?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a couple things like over helping people.
I call it a helpaholic.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
I call it unhook from over helping.
Yeah.
But the helpaholic, I might have to adopt that.
I didn't even come up with it. Like somebody said, I was in an executive leadership thing and this girl was like, I'm a helpaholic. And everybody was like, yes, you are.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize, of course, that has roots in codependency, but that is the part of that fawn trauma response.
Yeah. So can you explain to them what fawn is?
Yeah. Fawn is that syndrome when everyone else is more important than you. And so I'm like turning myself inside out to keep everyone else happy at my own expense.
Which is really dangerous. Thank you for sharing your conservative background. That's especially dangerous for conservative religions. I've had, Muslims, people from India, I mean, all kinds of different, conservative backgrounds. And that's very much been a part of the culture too. It's like, oh no, you're a good girl if, and in the Bible, like die to self or love others as much as you love yourself. Yeah, but it's like
sacrifice yourself.
Well, because really the lesson is love everyone except for yourself. It's not love others as yourself. It's love everyone except for yourself. And if you're not doing what I want, you're not being loving.
And the further message of that is if you are doing something to love yourself, you're being selfish and mean and and you're turning that around. That's definitely something that I had to work with. Mm-hmm. The other one that just haunted me so much is the freeze syndrome. And so I'm going to share a little parable that Wayne Dyer shared in one of his books. He's one of my favorite teachers, but he shared a parable of a woman who walked down a street every day, took the same street every day, but there's a big hole in that street. And so she walked down and she kept falling in the hole. And so at first it took her a long time to get up out of it. And then pretty soon she got quicker at getting up out of it. Then one day she decided, oh, I can walk around the hole. Mm-hmm. So she saw the hole, but she walked around it. And then one day she decided, oh, I can take a different street and avoid this hole altogether. And so that is what I teach women, and I use an acronym called ABOO-M because Abu was the monkey in the
from Aladdin, right? Yeah. Uh-huh.
So we've got ABOO and then M for monkey is our way to remember it. But the A is when we have these things happen is awareness. Mm-hmm. So seeing that it's happening. So that the lady finally saw that the hole was there and that there was a different path. Mm-hmm. And then B is be present with like what is happening right here, right now. The U is understanding, seek understanding. And then the M is make a different choice. Mm-hmm. So when I was in my marriage, I would go through, my voice would freeze, but I didn't understand that that's what was happening. I just couldn't share that. And even in the workplace, I worked in a highly male dominated workplace, and I just wouldn't be able to get the words out. And I would get so frustrated at myself, so angry at myself for, why didn't you say that? And then to fast forward on into some dating relationships, and I saw that same thing wherein this person was like inviting me to, welcoming what I had to say, but literally the words froze. And that was at the point in time when I had a coach who told me what freeze syndrome was and how that affects our parasympathetic nervous system, and how being present and breathing can help with that. And so went on and then was in another dating relationship, saw the same thing begin to happen, but now I'm like, oh, I know what's happening now. Mm-hmm. Now I can do something different. And then, I learned new tools and strategies to implement to help me be prepared when those things happen, or to help me think about, what subjects are going to trigger that. And so at the same time of learning new tools and strategies, healing that trauma. And that's where the make a different choice comes in. And that's where I think that people like you, the work that you do, coaches, therapists, counselors, are so impactful for helping us understand those new tools and strategies so we can make a different choice and have confident relationships where you don't have to have your voice freeze anymore. So I'm confident today that I can go into any situation I need to and take care of myself and speak what I need to. But it was because of a long journey of applying the ABOO-M principle. So
yeah, so and that's the way I say it is: get past the past, get real about the present, and get serious about the future. And seeing the whole, getting real about the present, like there's a hole. Like I feel like, it's always a joke that like awareness is the first step, but it really is, because it's like, well, why is there a hole? Why would God put a hole there? Why am I attracted to holes? You're just like, whoa, just go around the hole, new street. We get into analysis paralysis.
That's
with
right.
that freeze process as well. And how do you get unfrozen in your voice?
Yeah. So I think that's in that seek understanding. So for me, it was watching when it happened and then looking at the situation and saying, okay, what happened in that moment? What was I feeling in the moment? What was I feeling in my body? And like, what did it trigger for me? And then going through that healing process of looking, okay, where's that coming from? What's the anchor to it? Because that's the result of something else.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking back at that anchor. And for me, a lot of those anchors were, back in childhood where it wasn't safe to be seen or have a different opinion in someone else. And when my opinion was going to differ, that's when my voice would freeze. And so I had to go back and say, as a child, that was a safety mechanism for me. But as an adult, I'm no longer a victim and I have every right to share my opinion. And I can choose to do that. And of course, in a respectful manner to the people around me.
Well, and there's a phrase, I'm sure you've heard it, what got you here won't get you there.
Exactly.
And you probably needed that safety mechanism as a child,
That's right.
but it was a survival skill, not a thriver skill.
Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Exactly.
yeah. So what are some tools? So you recognized it. Did you like practice speaking in the mirror? Did you practice? I went to a self-defense class and I was shocked at how different it felt to no. I mean, I was shocked. I did a lot of self-work before that class. I did not think it was going to be that moving for me, but it really was.
Yeah. Well, I love that because
Mm-hmm.
doing something, that's the make a different choice, right? And so I began practicing in little areas of my life that making a different choice. So even with my kids, I realized, well, I sometimes still walked on eggshells with my kids when it came to expressing that different opinion. So it started there and being confident to do that. And then to say, okay, I can do that in this situation. Now I can do it in another situation. A lot of it for me was this healing work journey also of starting my business and being comfortable to be seen and heard on a broader level.
Yeah.
And, there was the fear inside of me of, oh, what's my conservative sister going to say if she listens to this? Or what's, so, and so it's again, recognizing those things and working back to why is that still a fear for me? And some of that comes back to confidence and trust in myself. So that was big in just looking and breaking down the pieces of it. And then I had several good coaches who I'm trained in oneness NLP, which is a form of bringing your higher self in and helping to heal in a quick way those things that sit in our subconscious that we don't even really know sit there.
Mm-hmm.
So using some of that, also working with a therapist for PTSD
Mm-hmm.
and went through EMDR was at one point was a super helpful in helping heal that.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to point out something interesting you said, which is you didn't start with the biggest thing first. Right. And I think when people are like, or it's like confidence in dating after a toxic relationship. And it's like, I don't feel confident in dating. And it's like, well, don't start with like the biggest fish. Like you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So you build your confidence in where you can create small wins, small opportunities to use your voice, small steps in the right direction. And because, it's like if we're dating, like the only way the date was a success is if he proposed and we lived happily ever after.
Right.
It's too much pressure we as women put on ourselves.
So right, we hold ourselves to a super high standard of expectation, and then who set that standard? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
some invisible measuring stick in our
Mm-hmm.
minds, and then we're the first to beat ourselves up and criticize the harshest when we don't measure up to our own measuring stick. So
Yeah.
giving grace to not
Giving
measure up.
Yeah, and there was with an executive leadership piece that I did, they said women's report cards. And like women's report cards has like perfect mother, perfect body, perfect job, perfect this, perfect house, perfect Christmas decorations, perfect home cooked meals. And guys had like, do I drive fast? Am I a better driver? You know, these only have like three things, right? Like work, driving, and ability to like do some sport. And that was like the only thing on their report card. And women had these huge long report cards for themselves. Like, and every woman in there was like, yes, I have a report card, a subconscious report card.
Yeah. So it's about lightening up and not taking ourselves so seriously too, and letting us be ourselves, be human.
Mm-hmm. And even in this context, right? Yes. We joked kind of about trauma. We joked about toxic relationships just to make it light, but it is even if you've been through abuse, even if you've had a controlling relationship, even if you married a narcissist, even if, I really want to be clear about, we're talking about in the context of after a toxic relationship.
Yes. And I think that you have a choice to let your experiences of the past they either control you or they define you. So you can allow them to continue to control you, or you can say they define who I am today, but they don't determine who I am today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, even like my program is called Wondrous Woman, and it's not called Toxic Relationship Survivors. It's not even called Toxic Relationship Thrivers, because then the definition is you having been in a toxic relationship rather than you just being amazing.
Exactly. You still keep the definition of yourself tied to that past.
Yes, which is no good for anyone.
No, and that's why the core piece of the work I do is exploring the unlimited possibilities and potential that women are capable of when they connect to this inner spirit that we all have. And when we take care of that inner spirit and we heal and resolve the past, then the possibilities truly are unlimited.
So what's one tip you have for helping people find, because I hate when people say, oh, what's one tip for becoming toxic person proof? And it's like, okay, one, really? Are you kidding? But what is one tip you have for helping people find their unlimited potential? Or at least step in that direction.
Yeah, it's going to sound again cliche, but it's be the change that you want others that you want to see in others. So don't expect the people around you to change if you're not willing to look inside and change first. Because when you change, the circumstances around you automatically have to change and respond differently.
Absolutely. Yeah. Show up as a different version of yourself. And, I use the term lead by example. I was finishing up the book High Performance Habits by Brendon Burchard. And he talked about when we learn to lead ourselves, if we know other people are watching this or other people are, that it makes us like more accountable to it. If your husband needs to go on a diet and you're more likely to eat healthy because he's watching and you're trying to lead him by example versus if it was just you.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
The name of my business is called Transcending Limits, because that's what I'm here to do, is help people transcend their limits in whatever shape they show up. So,
well, tell us where we can find more about you, Vicki.
Yes. So you can find me on social media at Transcending Limits, or my website is tslimits.com. And I do have a group on Facebook called Women Breaking Free from Emotional and Verbal Abuse to Reclaim Their Lives. So any of those places that you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you, Vicki. And thank you for helping us on our journey to become toxic person proof.
Thank you for having me here, Sarah.